How's it going, everyone? Vince here with On to the Next podcast. I am so honored and privileged to have these two on the podcast this week. They are my pastors, and they are a vital part of my life right now. And I am so happy for you guys to meet them, and can't wait for you guys to listen to this one. This is On to the Next.
It's been a long time coming. They ain't cuffing my cloth, they tugging it. Putting up numbers, 99 problems, and I'm still kept it 100. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. They ain't cuffing my cloth, they tugging it.
All right, guys. I am really, I feel really honored to have you guys on. These are, you see the Gages, Stefan and Nadira. They're my pastors, and so I hold them close to my heart. As far as what they've meant to me, 7 years ago we moved here to Florida, and it's been a pivotal moment in my life moving. But we were so happy when we met this family because initially Stefan, he was the coach for my son. And my son just gravitated towards him because he felt the presence of God in him. And it was so exciting. And then just so happened that they were starting a church, and we're going to talk about that. And we just happen to be a part of that church now. And so, everybody, this wonderful couple is the Gages. I kind of want you to introduce your guys' self.
And you go first.
Hey everyone. Thank you so much, Vince, for having us on here. Thank you so much for your yes to doing On to the Next. Thank you just for how you just are using your gifts just to glorify God and also to share your journey and others. So I think that's amazing. But I'm Nadira Gage. I get to be married to this wonderful man, Stefan, and we have lived in Orlando since 2015, and we were married in 2015 after meeting in 2013. I was like, yeah, so yeah.
That's his job to be wrong, not yours.
I was like, yeah, I have to think about it.
Listen.
So yeah, I am an educator at Horizon High School, which is a school here in Orange County. Assistant athletic director as well. I'm the head track and field coach for boys and girls, and I am a newly ordained pastor. So we have 3 children, and yeah, now you could take it away.
Welcome. Very good. I'm Stefan Gage. I have the opportunity and the tremendous blessing to be married to, there you go, praise God, to my beautiful bride. We're celebrating 10 years. Like I said all the time,
Wow.
we're vets in the game now. We're about to hit
Yeah.
double digits.
Yes.
We'll be celebrating 10 years in July. But I'm originally from Syracuse, New York, born and raised. Went to school in Staten Island, Wagner College, played Division I football, coached Division I football. Moved down to Florida in 2013, coaching at FAU. Met Nadira in 2013, got engaged 2014, married in 2015.
Okay, you were very detailed. Look at you.
Yeah, I was about to hit the brake sound. I don't have it because I was like, hold up.
And
yeah,
right. But we're married. We have 3 kids, like my wife said. I am a learning specialist at a med school here. I'm a life coach. I'm a pastor. I'm a track and field coach, a football coach, and a father and a husband, and those things.
yeah, and it's sometimes this is kind of intimidating. I don't want to say that, but I mean, because I feel, Stefan, you're so inspirational as a pastor, and it's like, man, I'm here trying to inspire others, and that's why I kind of have guys like you on the podcast. But it's also intimidating because I have to say that, Nadira, you're by far one of the best speakers that I've ever met, and the way you convey your message, it's just amazing. So it is a little intimidating being here with you guys
No.
talking in this realm, but I want to get people to know these journeys that I've encountered and people who inspired me.
Mhm.
So I kind of want to I always say that I think to get to where you are right now, there is a story behind it,
Mhm.
because sometimes that's important. Sometimes the battles that we go through push us to be the person we are today.
Absolutely.
And I want to kind of take this journey together, like a side
Mhm.
by side.
Yeah.
Stefan, so growing up, you kind of already started mentioning some of the things you were involved with, but I kind of want you to give us the path that kind of led you to say this is a direction I want to take, because you have an interesting story growing up, and um I know that like there's points that your brokenness comes to a point where you're like, man, I want to take what I've been through and make sure that everybody knows that God is on their side through those ventures.
Mhm.
So I kind of give us like growing up where your battles and ventures were. And I
Yeah.
know this is a it's a crazy road, but I
Yeah.
kind of want people to know um
Yeah.
that they're not alone in these journeys, and the way you overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a great question. I think it's a great segue into just thinking about the next. Again, I mentioned I was born and raised in Syracuse, New York.
Mhm.
For some of you who may be, wondering, Syracuse is upstate New York. When I mention Syracuse, a lot of people one of the first things they say is either the dome, and then they go into the snow, and then they be like, it's country. But the
Yeah.
part of Syracuse that I was born and raised in was the inner city. Syracuse is known for high poverty, high crime rates, high drug use, for broken families. You name it, pretty much. That's what Syracuse is known for. And I unfortunately grew up in a part of that statistic. My mother was addicted to drugs from an early age, from all what I can remember, all until I graduated high school. So it was, I have four brothers and a sister, and my father raised us pretty much, my brothers and I, in a house, barely making ends meet. We've seen firsthand how drugs rip away a family and separate some things. And so that was the kind of the start, but I always knew, even as a young kid, I wasn't the oldest. I was like kind of like the middle. So I learned a little bit from my older siblings and then my younger siblings at the same time. But I always knew that I wanted to get out. And I knew that we weren't in a financial position to pay for college. So, I'm not that old, but during that time period, it wasn't like certain, things for kids who didn't have it. It was either you go into the workforce or you pay for school. And I just knew from the beginning that I didn't want my dad to pay for college. And that's what I told my dad. I was always looked at as the oddball in my family, because I strive to do things the right way. I got good grades. I try to stay out of trouble as much as possible. And I really just worked at, whatever it was. Growing up, I played football, basketball, baseball, and lacrosse. And that was the thing that kept me off the streets, that kept me busy. But that gave me a sense of hope. I was battling what I didn't even know. I had anger issues, but I took that out on the football field and the basketball field court, and I masked it that way, and it made me a great athlete and great competitor. But it was me not knowing how to deal with the internal trauma of seeing, domestic violence, seeing my mom hooked on drugs, not having my mom around. And that really drove me. That was like the underlying thing that drove me. A lot of people used to say like, oh, you play with this edge, and that edge was, underlying anger, simply because things were out of my control. So I was fortunate enough to get a full ride to Wagner College, which is a small Division I school in Staten Island. I played 4 years there, had a phenomenal career. Um, I don't really like to talk about myself in that realm, but I had a very, very productive career there. I made a lot of accolades or whatnot. But I knew that it was time for me to turn that page in my life because, all people knew me as was they didn't even call me Stefan. My nickname was Moose. I was Moose, the
Yeah,
the athlete. And it came
just
to a point,
ran over people, right?
right? Yeah. So it came to a point, it was like, my last college football game. I just remember I was like, I'm done with this. I didn't want to pursue going to the NFL, to CFL, although I was having agents invite me to combines and regional combines and that nature. I literally took my cleats off. I left them on the field, and I was ready to. I just turned the page in my life, and
Yeah,
from there
that's
it was graduating, and then
well, I want to stop right there because that's like uh, that's a pivotal moment right there.
it
You're
is.
like that's storyboard
Mhm.
material right there that you're talking about. But I want to because I know the answer to this, but you have up to this point have you had a relationship with God at all in your life?
Absolutely not. The crazy part is that if we were going to practice a religion, the closest thing of a religion that was in our home was Jehovah's Witness. My
Yeah,
grandmother was a practicing Jehovah's Witness, and every now and then she'll come over to the house and lead like a Bible study with us. My dad was actually raised as Jehovah's Witness, but he didn't want us to have to go through the same restrictions that he had to go through, so he never like really forced it on us. So up until this point, no, didn't have a relationship with Christ. I actually thought about this like not too long ago, and I was like, I wish somebody would have introduced the gospel to me when I was in those high school years.
yeah.
To save myself a lot of troubles, a lot of heartache. But that would have took away your job, right?
Yeah, well, because I feel like when you're at a young age, even being introduced, like, to the Jehovah Witness, I mean, I think with any religion that's presented to you, if it's brought as, like, a mandate more than anything, it's
Yeah,
like, it's the one thing you just wanna run away from it as
run
far as
away. Right?
possible. And if that's the way it's presented to you as you're
Mhm.
mandated to do this,
Mhm.
it's a hard thing to I was fortunate enough to it wasn't I did have some mandates with religion, but I had a really good mother to kind of separate that for me over the years.
Mhm.
So that and I was asked that just to kind of get you up to this point because I want to now that you've kind of gone to that point, I want Nadira to kind of give where you started off from and kind of get you to that point where he's at right now.
That's good.
Okay, so my journey growing up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so I just feel like it's so all over the place. So I grew up in a two-parent household. My parents were really hard workers. My dad had started a business, so we lived very comfortably. And it was four of us, well, five of us, because my dad I have an older sister, so we're a blended family, but five of us. And so growing up, I just kind of was exposed to a lot of different things. So my grandparents, whose house we would stay at in the summer, they were Christians, they were believers. And so when my brother and I were there in the summer, we were exposed to church, and they had the old school Baptist church with the hymns and revival nights and all those things. But when we were in Jersey, we didn't really have a strict religion that we followed. I remember there were times when my dad was heavy into Islam. And so we would have to learn Arabic, and we would have to recite these prayers and read the Quran. And it was just like we would practice Ramadan and we would do all these things. And as I got older, I realized I was very conflicted with a lot of
Mhm.
things. And so, really, what happened is when I went to college, I felt like I was faced with just a lot of identity issues and not really knowing who I was. I in high school, I hid my kind of self in sports. So I did track all year long, and it was hard for me at times because I came behind a brother who was number one in the state. You know, he was like
Mm,
this national
Mhm.
athlete, and so my coaches there were like kind of training me in that module like I would be that athlete. And him and we ended up being two different type of athletes running two different type of races. So even just transitioning into college, I felt like I just had a lot of questions about my identity, who I was, you know, being conflicted with different religions and not really having that person in my life to guide me. And I remember getting to a place where I was suicidal. And I remember there was a night, and I remember this night very vividly, my freshman year in college, where I had called my friend, because this is the time before cell phones were really, you know, a thing like that. And I just told her, I was like, I give up. Like, I give up on life, you know, and if there is a God, he will find where I am right now. And I left my dorm. My dorm was backed up. It backed up to like a highway, and I had like went out on the highway, and literally within minutes the girl that I called along with a friend of ours came and found me. They literally, instead of driving to my dorm like any normal person kind of would drive, they literally left
Mhm.
her apartment and was running across this highway to get, not realizing that they would find me. And
mm,
so from that point on, I was like, I started to see, oh my goodness, God, maybe you are real, because I said, if you are real, you would show up. And he sent two people to show up in a place where only he could find me.
Right.
And so from there, I got connected to friends that I went to high school with, that we ended up going to the same college, and we started to get involved in the church, which later it's crazy how that all came to fruition and moving to Orlando. It's a church that a friend of mine who I grew up with, their parents had started. And it was a church that was right by our college. So it was very, you know, young and vibrant, because there were so many college students that were there. There was a campus ministry. And so that's kind of how I got plugged into the faith. Um, and so over the years, that was like my, you know, coming into my identity. And then I just remember over time, because I I was in the church and involved in, you know, trying to live the right way, but was not I didn't really have a strong foundation. And so over time I found myself kind of back into like this lifestyle of just like not of putting God on the back burner. And
mhm.
then later on, in college, as I'm finishing up my college, I get pregnant with Nala. And so that was like kind of something that kind of shook me a lot and kind of took me off of the faith walk that I was in. And I remember just feeling one day, like as a single mom, looking at my daughter and saying, like, I need to provide stability for her, unlike what I felt I had growing up. And so I had started to attend, I went to a youth conference or a young adult conference that my best friend took me to. And from there, like I gave it all to the Lord. I remember just feeling like I just needed to have a fresh start and really like move on to my next chapter in my faith, and be bold in my faith and be strong in my faith. And so that church was actually the sister church of the church that I had first, you know, gave my life to Christ. But there I was planted. I was planted in the young adult ministry. I had a couple who were like my spiritual parents, who would actually sit with me and teach me the Bible. They would have Nala and I over their house. And so like a lot of times when you see how Stefan and I are with like young kids, that's how
Mhm.
they were for us as young adults. And even with Nala, and I have pictures of when Nala was like,
Yeah.
we called her the crossfire kid, because she was coming with me, you know, to these settings, and she was the crossfire baby. And so that's where my foundation really began to get solid, because I felt like there I had like a village
Mhm.
of believers that were helping me walk out my
Yeah.
faith and learn more about who Christ was.
So, so this was the two churches are connected, just happen
Yes.
to be connected. So I think this is a lot of questions for even a lot of young ladies that are in that position, because going from the church that you're at, and you're still trying to figure this faith thing out, your faith in God out, but
Yeah.
end up like you end up having Nala. And when
Mhm.
you went to the church, same church, did you ever feel like there was any judgment upon you? Because a lot of girls, they deal with that, and I think they're scared to go back to the place that, is trying to help them, uplift them. But they're like, well, you're like, oh, I just made this mistake in faith's, in
Yes.
God's eye. You feel like, am I going to be accepted? How, I mean, because it doesn't sound like you're being judged for that. It sounds like they're like, we love you, we know that your journey is
Yeah.
still moving forward,
Right.
and this is, I
Yeah.
mean, how did you feel in that moment of just going back to the church?
Yeah, so because they were two different churches, I was actually scared to go back to the first church initially. And it was like something that I kind of made up in my mind, like, oh, well, would people judge me and things like that? And so that was a part of the reason why I went to the sister church, because they're two churches, but it's like separate pastors, but they're all like affiliated.
Yeah.
But what happened was the pastor's wife, and she's a pastor herself of the first church that I went to. I saw how she treated another friend of mine that kind of went through the same thing of having a baby and going through those steps. And she was really like a mother, and she was loving, and she was
Mhm.
compassionate. And so when I saw how she interacted with her and how there was no judgment, there was no condemnation, I felt very comfortable going back there and being able to do things. We actually ended up doing a lot of things together with young adults, even with single mothers, and so just the
Yeah.
support
That's
that
good.
came
Mhm.
with it, and even as someone who she was older in the faith, to be able to set the tone, like, yeah, these are things that happen, and yes, it may not have been God's way, but however, we're still going to love you through it, because we still serve a God that's gracious, that's compassion, that's filled with compassion, and that's filled with mercy. And so I believe that just the attributes that they had at the old church and even at the new church, that really helped me to develop a comfort with going, and then even develop a heart for young women who may have experienced that, where they may
Yeah.
have had children and just may have felt like they are judged and are scared to come back, just to give them that space, like, no, there are people that will love you through it in
Yeah,
spite
because
of.
and that's why I asked, because I just feel like there's a lot of young ladies who are,
Mhm.
they're afraid, even young men who have,
Yes.
taken that step. But it's, I thank God so much for people like that, that God puts those
Yeah.
people in our lives, because it doesn't always happen. And for
Right. Yeah.
you, it just happened to, I guess, um ac accompany your story and where
Mhm.
you're at to today. But um and so this is like where you guys are, kind of at the same point in your life. You're, Stefan, you're getting ready to move on from college right now, and you're like, I don't know what I want to do, but you still wanted to be involved in sports, because I know,
Right.
if anybody knows Gage, the guy like loves sports. And
Mm.
I truly believe that sports is, it's an important thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I've talked about it with many, even a couple of the people in the past podcasts, how, the importance of sports and what it could bring to a young man or young woman in their lives. But so you're moving forward from playing.
Mhm.
What's your next move right now?
Whew, that's a great question. So during this time period, first of all, thank you for sharing your story. I love that.
Yeah,
I probably hear it all the time, but I thank you for that. But I was graduating. I was graduating with a degree in sociology with a focus in criminal justice with a minor in psychology. I really wanted to be a child protective service agent, in New York City. I wanted to help children out who had backgrounds like mine so they can get out of certain
yeah,
situations.
Mhm.
So I went and I took that test and I passed the test. And the protocol was you would pass the test, then the city of New York will, you know, they reach out to you. But they never reached out to me, you know, so I didn't really have a next. But I had a friend, one of the coaches on the staff who knew someone at another college in Massachusetts called Stonehill College. It's funny, Gabe goes there. Right? No, he goes to Assumption, but we played against them. But
Yeah.
we he connected me, and I went up there and I interviewed in Braintree, Massachusetts, and ended up getting the job. So once I graduated college in June, I think I went to Massachusetts a little bit, a couple weeks after that. And I had it set out. I was going to be a college football coach, you know. And when I got there, I don't, no offense to anyone from Mass who will be watching this, but I did not like Mass one bit, you know. So maybe it's the New York in me, but I did not like.
Yeah, it's probably the New York in you.
So I ended up going there, and it was 2 weeks, and then my head football coach from Wagner College called me and said, "Hey, what do you think about coming back here? We paying for your degree, paying for your house, and you get to coach." And I was like, no brainer. So
Yeah.
I end up telling the coach, sorry, I'm going back to Wagner. So went back to Wagner, and I began coaching Division I football again, thinking I am the man. You know, I'm young, I'm 22 at the time, and I'm coaching. You know, I'm coaching some of the players that I played with. You know, so as you can imagine, it's a little.
Let me tell you how it is now.
Right. So I get back there, and I spent 2 seasons at Wagner. You know, but I tell my wife this: school was never my thing. You know, so I was getting these classes paid for. I was free, and man, like you know, I had to repeat some classes, and I was actually a couple of credits away from getting a master's degree in childhood education. You know, and the only thing left was like a class and then doing student teaching. But I was like, I'm never being a teacher. This is why I think God has such a sense of humor. I was like, I'm never being a teacher. You know, so and this is when the Lord stepped in. I didn't know the Lord, but he stepped in at this point in time. And I had a friend who I worked with at Wagner ended up taking a job at FAU. And he called me and was like, hey, there's a position down here. Are you interested? I was like, yeah. And he was like, well, first you got to get into school here and the master's program, and then you got the job. So I applied, I got accepted, and I packed everything up in my 2008 Chevy Impala. And I drove down to Florida in 2013. You know, the crazy part about it is that I never knew how much I was making. I never asked that question. I didn't have a place to live, and I only knew one person there. I had no family or whatnot. So I'm driving down to Boca Raton. I get there, and the first night I think I stay in a hotel, and then I sleep on a couch, sleep in the office a few times, you know. But during that time period, this is where I was introduced to the Lord. Because I met Nadir shortly after. I didn't know that we would be here today, almost celebrating 10 years together, married. But we started off as just friends. You know, we would talk, and, you know, I knew she was in the church, and I knew she was something different when it was about her. And she was always invite me to church. But, you know, with my schedule at FAU, it was just crazy, 7 days a week pretty much. And it so happened that a few times, like I had a bye week. So I was able to attend church because we come in later. And then like we played on like a Friday night. So they allowed us to do something on a Sunday, you know. And I remember going to church, you know, the small church, storefront church, and you know, just feeling something different. Well, a lot of people don't know during that time period, I was extremely depressed and I was extremely anxious. For the first time in my life, I acknowledged those feelings because I was away from the norm, away from my family. You know, you kind of take a step back and you don't know your family's dysfunctional until you like take a step back. But you still want to be a part of dysfunction because that's all you know. So I was away from it. And I just remember like crying myself into the office, and then when it's dark, and then when leaving, when it's dark, and crying my way back home. And then, you know, just feeling like so anxious, my heart racing, can't regulate the heart. I actually went to like, I just drove myself to an urgent care and said, I can't catch my breath. And she said, you're suffering from anxiety. and they prescribed me pills. Never took the pills, and it was just a dark time. So when she began to invite me to church, I just remember sitting there, and I guess this is why I'm so passionate about worship, is because I used to go there and I used to just look at the worship team, particularly like the drummer, and I used to be like, "This is gonna keep bringing me back," And I was making it more consistent, and it was at one time, I don't know what was being preached, I just know that salvation was offered, and Vince, no lie, I felt like I floated up to the altar, and I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior in 2013. And it was the most important decision I made in my life, and the best decision I made.
Yeah.
Second
And
decision, like 1B, 1A. You know what I mean?
So, and that's really important, because you could have easily pivoted the other way and
Mhm.
self-destructed, because you were given the opportunity. Say,
Yeah.
hey, here's a bottle full of pills. Here's, just
Yeah.
all the things that you hear about today, where people
Yes.
can't decipher that situation and they end
Yeah.
up going down the wrong path. But I think that's so important to explain to people, because it's not me saying, hey, you need. I'm mandating you to be a follower of God or Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you the truth of like
That's
through
it.
through this podcast. I'm just kind of trying to let people hear the truth about where
Yeah.
these stories and these journeys and they're on to the next moments are coming from, because a lot of them come from pivotal moments like this. And
Mhm.
so I want to take Nadira and like get you to this point, because I mean, is this the church you're at right now that you're going to, that he ended up going to?
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta share
Yeah.
that story. Because you said the two connected.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
So
Okay.
you gotta
So
you move down. You move down.
yes. So
Yeah.
yeah. So after so in 2011, Nala and I moved to Florida, and so it was just her and I. We drove in our 2011. Okay, it was new Sonata, which is, and we moved to Florida so that Nala could be closer to her father, like in distance wise, because he lives in Florida, and it was a hard decision for me, because I felt like that was, of course, my family's there, but really my church family. And this family had walked us through so many things. And I felt like I learned so much biblically from them, and just felt just like the love that we needed to feel in those years. And so it was very hard decision, but God had clearly said, you need to move to Florida. And so when I'm moving, I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm moving so she's closer to her dad, not really knowing that I'd eventually meet my husband 2 years later. And so we were there. It was very hard at first. I remember calling my mom and saying, like, Mom, it's not easy. I took a significant pay cut. It was a very hard to transition, even though a lot of people that I went to college with were actually originally from Florida. I had new people there, but it still was not the same kind of community that I was used to. And so I remember calling her saying, like, Mom, this is hard. And she said, well, you can come back, but I need you to remember the reason why you went. And I said, okay. So put so many things into perspective, and I had to just continue to tell myself that. And then a friend invited us to church, which is actually Nala's cousin, invited us to a church that they were attending. And I just remember it was very different from the church that I was going to. I went to a larger church in Jersey. And so this was a much smaller church. And they didn't have, of course, all the different ministries and such that Cathedral of Hope and Abundant Life were the churches I went to in Jersey, but it was very family oriented, and they had a very great area in ministry for kids. And so for Nala and I was like, well, this is a good fit, because it's not overwhelming. The people are really nice. The pastors are reachable. Like, I can call them, I can text them, I can they're not like up all the way here and we're like all the way so far. They're reachable.
Yeah.
And so that was a really good community that I feel that I need. Actually, those pastors ended up marrying Stephen and I in New Jersey.
Wow.
They flew up to be there with us and marry us, but it was a safe environment. And so that was the one that I continued to invite him to. And I remember when I first met Stephen, the couple that I had told you about that kind of were my spiritual parents, I called him. I called, my spiritual father, Minister Dean. And I was like, hey, I met this guy, I think he's, cool. There's something different about him, but, he's needs some working on him because he's not,
Got some jagged edges.
know the Lord yet. But, I just want you to see. And in faith, like I trusted, Minister Dean. And I said, Minister Dean, if you tell me like to run, like I trust you so much that I will flee, because I was like, what I have been through.
So
And
real quick, so when you guys initially met, so have you accepted God into your life at this point, or are you just
No.
still filling it out?
I was
You-
still a wild boy.
yeah, he
Yeah.
was so that's why I called Minister Dean and I was like, I don't know what to do, and I want you to meet him. Because that was one of the first questions, like, what's your faith like, and what do you believe? But Minister Dean had a conversation with Stephen that he thought was supposed to be very short.
It's
Ended
supposed
up
to be
being a long
a
conversation.
couple hours.
And then Minister Dean calls me and he said, I know that, there's still work on him to do, but he was like, it's something about his heart. Like it's something about, his character. He said that, I feel like, is different. And I feel like the Lord is going to soften his heart for the word. And so I said, all right, Minister Dean, because if, I trust you, like I trusted Minister Dean like a father. Like
Yeah.
I had a very high and low relationship with my biological father. So Minister Dean to me was like the father figure that I can go to when it came to my future, when it came to, my kid. And so that was why I went to him. And so for him to say that, I was like, okay, well, there must be, I guess I'm not wrong. There's something about him.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I need Jesus to come personally talk to him so that he can know Jesus for himself.
So, and this is also very important because there are so many relationships that start that you kind of, you could have easily said, oh,
Mhm.
Stefan's got it going on. I don't care what everybody else thinks. Me and him are gonna ride or die, It's like,
Yeah.
but you're actually okay. It's time to put my guard up. I don't only have me, I have my daughter to look
Right.
for,
Yes.
and I need to go about this the right way.
Yeah.
And that's such a pivotal thing for young people to do. If they're, especially if they're in faith, they
Yes.
need to engage in knowing through prayer and through
Yes.
counsel through
Yeah.
pastors, or to actually get that. Am I actually doing the right thing here? Because I don't
Right.
know. And that's really important. And so you meet him and he's like, finally, you're like, man, and could you see it right away when he's like, he decided to change his life?
Yeah. I saw it right away. It was like Stefan has like from the beginning, like he was just different. He had such a good heart. He was very attentive. He was very just the characteristics of somebody you could be safe with, like I can trust you with my heart. I can trust you with my life. I could trust you with my my child and our future children. But it was still like the kind of question like, but we still need to be able to have that foundation.
That's right.
And so when he gave his life to Christ, you could see that there was an immediate hunger for the word of God. There was a hunger for just to be around other believers. There was a hunger even to encourage others to, follow down the path to finding Christ for themselves. So it was really like a change. And I remember when we were actually in like premarital counseling, I remember telling our pastors at the time, like, I feel like I had been in the faith for so much longer than Stefan, but he got to a point where he just like went so high so quick, like, and so knowledgeable of things so quick, so fast. And I was just like, man. And I just remember years back, a friend of mine who was married, because I used to be around a lot of women who were married, just to show me what it was like to be a godly wife. And I remember she said, like, there are times where the Lord will accelerate people in like the knowledge of him, and accelerate people in their faith. And people who have been like walking with the Lord for a long time could look and just be like, man. And I felt like that with him. Like, it was just an
Yeah.
acceleration and a boldness that he just did not, wasn't ashamed to share. And so that was really cool.
It's crazy because over my walk with Christ, and I've had my struggles with
Mhm.
just my faith throughout. I'm going to be honest, I've had my struggles throughout my life, my
Mhm.
walk with God, of just like kind of determining, is this really who I am? And
Yeah.
God, are you there?
Yeah.
Because I'm at this point. But one thing that's amazing is I've always seen that people who have gone through these times in their lives, or these moments in their lives, who find God at a certain point, it's like their fire is just
Yeah.
10
Yeah.
times
Mhm.
what a believer who's kind of known all of his life and kind of seen different paths. You're like, man, this is what I was missing like the whole
Yeah.
time. And
Mhm.
so it's like, I'm not gonna let it go now. So and that's what's I'm so amazed by your faith sometimes, because I am, but I'm not, because I've seen it before with
Yeah.
people who have gone through points and really haven't been introduced to God, because
Yeah.
they're and even I've noticed, even with in your early life, you said your father was Jehovah Witness.
Mhm.
And it's crazy because there are like parallels to the
Mhm.
Jehovah Witness religion and
Yeah.
what Christ, but there's at the same time there is such a difference
Such a
also.
Yeah.
difference. Mhm.
And it's like at that moment you felt
Yeah.
that difference, and it's
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm off to the races now. It's a
Yeah.
whole other venture for you.
Mhm.
So at this point you're coaching, and I know
Mhm.
there's still like struggles throughout your lifetime, like at FAU, and like,
Yeah.
okay, now I'm kind of venturing into actually starting a real relationship.
Mhm.
Where am I going to take this? Especially because you're like, well, now I have like, I not only a woman of God, but I have a child that I'm like thinking of entering into my life. So
Absolutely.
what are your thoughts at this time?
Yeah. So it was extremely difficult in the beginning, because you were trying to escape a world or step out of a world into a new world, but while still living in the same world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't
Um,
yeah.
so, I was in, coaching, and if you know anything about coaching and football or athletics in general, it's very easy for you to get into the cycle of, oh, you're gonna do that, you're gonna drink, you're gonna smoke, you're going to, be around women, you're gonna do this, so you get into this mindset that you have to rework your brain thinking that you have, because entertainment portrays athletes a certain way,
Mm,
or the stigma that they have around that. So you're reworking your brain. And I would like to say that, it'll be, lying of me. I said if that I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior and everything was all good,
oh,
you know,
I already know. I
but it
keep going.
wasn't. I accepted, my life, accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I went through a time period where I was still trying to please the world, please my family, but still wanting to call myself saved and live for Christ. Because when I took this step, it was my step that I took. I wasn't
Yeah,
doing it as a result of Nadira. She can lead me to the water, but she can't force me to drink.
yeah.
But also I didn't do it because of my family. It's
Mhm.
because of a personal conviction that I had for myself, had within myself for who God was. He became real to me. It was got to a point though, where in our relationship where, I looked at my age and I looked at the people around me who are similar to my age, and they were out partying, they were all drinking, they were out, hanging out, and doing all these different things. And I told Nadira, I was like, I think I want to go back. I think I'm making a mistake here. And I attempted to call off what we had going on. I said, I just need some time to think, because of inside of me, I was like, I'm looking at the people around my peers, and none of them are settling down. None of them have a kid to worry about. And that was my resolve. And I took that venture, I was like, I'm just going to take a break. And I really tried, to do my own thing. But again, what the Lord placed inside of me wasn't something that was just going to be blown over like that. And I just remember sitting there, and I was, just feeling empty. And this is early, like late 2013. And I just remember feeling empty and, still dealing with the same things. And I was like, how long is this going to continue? And I started looking at the patterns of my family, and realizing that if I don't do something, I'm just going to keep reproducing the same patterns that has been seen over
Yeah.
and over throughout my family. So I remember, coming back to church, and at that point in time, I knew I needed to step away from coaching football, to reclaim my time, but also to get out of that environment. So I remember, Nadira actually did this. She submitted my resume to a charter school in Boynton Beach, and they called me for an interview. Now, again, remember I said that how sense of humor, I said I would never be a teacher, but she submitted my resume to this charter school. They called me in, and then they hired me right on the spot. No credentials, no anything. And they stuck me in the 7th grade civics class. And they said, you are the teacher now. I was like, so, I went from saying never teaching to now I'm walking into it being a teacher with no credentials or anything.
You're looking up like, really?
Yeah, I was like, God, really? But it provided stability. What it did for that time period, it provided stability with financials. I was making money now, benefits and, things of that nature. But we really had it in ourselves that we were going to do things the right way. So we courted. I never knew what courted was. I just thought it was a fancy word for dating, and then she broke it down biblically of what it meant to court, so we abstained from sex. We even took it a step further once we got engaged in 2014, and said we weren't going to kiss until our wedding day. Just because, and that's what we did. And I just remember just going through that process, and, really growing my strength and my faith in God. And one of the things that I did, with her help as well, is that when I really got serious about my walk with Christ, I changed my phone number. I got off social media for a good while. I left group chats. I did all these things to kind of distance myself, to say, like, I'm serious about where I'm going,
Yeah.
my future is going.
Smart man.
And, and I remember it being, some of the most lonely times in my life, but it was the most peaceful at the same time. For once, I didn't have to worry about my phone going off and the person who's looking through it not being acceptable, not being
the
appropriate.
temptation of everything that has been presented to you throughout your years. Literally, you have to just pull it away from you sometimes.
So just push away from the table.
And so you're at that point, and it's like it's almost getting to the point where you guys are getting married. And Nadira, how did you feel of that moment that he said, I just want to take this little break for a while? Were you like, boy, I just talked to the pastor about you. I try to have your back.
So that was very hard, because it took me a while to bring him around Nala, and then for him and Nala, they had developed a relationship. And before we courted, like, we had been intimate. So, like, for me, and I was open with Minister Dean about that, and just saying, like, okay, so, like, we had crossed this boundary already. Like, he realized later that, now he doesn't know what he wants to do. And so that was really hard. And so we went to, I remember really just being around women who were able to encourage me through that, because they were kind of there when we were kind of always together, to the point where like now he's not really around. And so one of the women I remember just said, just continue to pray, and pray for God's will, pray for God's will, pray for restoration. But she said, but if God does, say yes, things will come back together. Make sure this time you do it different. And so that's when we realized, like, that if we are going to continue on this journey, that we have to put boundaries,
Right.
And so but it was very hard for me in that moment. Even like the advice, even like the praying, like there were days where I cried, there were days, where I called and, and he wouldn't answer, and just because we had become so accustomed to spending
Yeah.
time together. So to say it was like something easy, it wasn't, because there was already like a soul tie that had been created.
Yes.
So it was really hard to navigate through that. And then even just like when Nala would ask for him, so it was very challenging, and so it was just learning how to go day by day, but also like being able to show up for my daughter, and just feeling like also like I failed, because I'm like, I had went to this journey of like, abstaining and being celibate and just focusing on, the Lord, to then now having that happen. And so I felt like, there were parts of me that also failed. And so it was hard. And so I had to learn to build myself back up again in the Lord, and learn that, the Lord has my future, regardless of how it looked in that moment. He has my future. And so like when he realized, that yes, like he was supposed to be with me.
I miss you.
Right. One of the things that we said was, well, we're doing things different. And that's where we were like, we're not going to be intimate. We're not going to cross boundaries, and we were accountable to people to help us, because I feel like that was making sure like that we were together outside of the physical, or outside of just the comfort of even, just being with that person. And we really began to focus our relationship on the Lord. And after we had went through a consecration, a time of prayer and fasting, that's when the Lord told him that I was his wife. So it was a lot of up and downs. It wasn't like this perfect situation.
Yeah.
And for me, I think I took it so hard because I had said like a lot of the women that I were around, they had this where they were, they met their man, the Lord told them this is their husband, and they were, remain pure till marriage, and it was like this beautiful thing. And I was like, well, my story is like not like that,
No,
and being unashamed to even share that, about myself. And so just really just seeing the Lord's hand and his hand of redemption, even through it was beautiful. And I believe it's because even though we may not have had the perfect story, like
it was our story.
It was our story. And for the time where we gave him everything, that we could. And through the scars and through the pain, there was something beautiful on the other side of it. So
well, I think that God speaks to us in ways that we just don't understand sometimes. And it's like at the time you were like, I don't understand why you don't just have me moving forward, God, because if he wants to go on. But it's like, man, when you're sometimes in the middle of moving to your next point in life, it's like that point is just back and forth, and it's like you feel stuck in a rut, or you're just not, you don't feel like you're getting anywhere. But God's like, just be patient. We'll get there. I'm going to take you on my route, and it's so cool. And so you guys, I mean, I'm sure it was a beautiful wedding. I mean, I've seen the photos. You guys, and to have the pastor that has been kind of been a mentor for you guys, been counsel for you guys, being able to marry you guys. That's always a beautiful story. And you guys get to that point. You guys are married, and you guys are taking on a new challenge, because when did you guys move to the Orlando area? Was that pre kids or
so here's how we did it. So we got married July 25th.
Sorry, I was
I know I
right.
knew I was 2015, but we went up to New Jersey in June once school let out. You know, but before we went up to Jersey, what we did was we got an apartment together in Orlando because we got I got a job offer in Orlando, you know, so got a apartment there. We moved all our stuff there. I ended up staying with the pastor in Orlando, who ended up being who we moved to Orlando for to help plant his church. Nadira and Nala stayed in the house for the few days we were there. Then we went up to New Jersey. We got married. So when we came back, we were in this apartment on the east side of Orlando together. This is 2015. And we started life, you know. We started attending a church there this is the full circle moment that we were talking about in the beginning. The pastor of that church was the son of the pastor who Nadira got saved under in New Jersey.
Oh, wow.
You know, so we
Yeah.
end up
That I
attending that
didn't
church.
know.
Yeah, and attending that church and helping him, helping the congregation, and you know, we're just serving alongside, and so kind of that's where that's where we started Orlando. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and so what year was Ania born?
2017.
2017. And it was like, so I'm telling you, having kids is the most beautiful thing that you could experience in the world. But I mean that it's also challenging because now you're 2 years in, you guys are let's challenge, and you're already Nala's already in your life, and she's already Gage, you're already a part of her life, and
Right.
you're full on father mode, you know, and so I guess it was kind of a like precursor to what was to come, you know. So I mean, you have beautiful children. I mean, it's we love them so much, and I know that and we met them for what year was it? 2021?
Yeah.
Was it 21 that we met you guys? 22.
20.
21?
It was 20?
20 or 21?
21 maybe.
It was after Stephen was born.
Yeah, because I mean we kind of met when you were a coach at CJ's coach. And so I want to talk about that because you end up getting a job where my son goes to school.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're back in the coaching world.
Yeah.
So how,
interesting.
Is it because I love you just couldn't, because I know you love the sport, so you're like, man, I got to be involved, and God has me right now. You feel like because I really, God had prepared you over those couple years to start being a mentor. So how's that looking for you right now?
Yeah, so we were middle school teachers at the time.
Yeah.
At a middle school in Dr. Phillips area called Southwest Middle School, but we were living in East Orlando at the time, so we were commuting. It was like 50 minutes each way, you know, and we were thinking, you know, of Nala, and during that time period, we was actually in the process of buying our home, which we are in today, which is in Winter Garden. You know, and we were thinking about what school will Nala go to, or whatnot. So I remember being at Southwest, and I was like, maybe I can get back into coaching. And of course, I ran it by my wife, and she's like, yeah, she should. It'd be great.
That's cool.
You know, she's always pushing me to get back into coaching. You know,
I know.
Yeah. So she was like, it'd be great. So what I did, many people don't know this, but I went on the website. And I was just looking for anyone because I was trying to find the head coach, and it was like the guy named, I think his name was like Bumpers at the time.
Yeah.
But he ended up starting and then leaving, you know. So what I did was I went on Facebook and found the athletic director at the time, and I shot him a message like, hey, I was a former coach. Are you interested? And then what he did was sent my resume. He sent my resume and everything to the coach. The coach called me, and then AD called me and said, "Hey, listen, I got a history position open for you. If you want it, you can come, coach." And that was it. That was our way to bring knowledge into Windermere High School, and for me to start coaching. And yeah, that was my first stint at coaching high school football. Well, I was at a Apopka for a little bit, but
Yeah.
yeah. So that was it, and it's honestly one of my greatest. I love it. I love coaching simply because you have such an impact on the children. A
Yeah.
positive impact, and you can also
Absolutely.
have a negative impact if you're doing it the wrong way.
Right.
But yeah, so that was it. We're at Windermere High School. We were at Windermere High School at that time, and I meet CJ. Now, before I knew you, I knew CJ, and CJ was absolutely he was my guy. Like he was the type, almost like the Swiss Army knife. You can plug him anywhere. He never said
Mhm.
much. He just got out there and got it done. And I just remember like creating a bond with him, and I was like, man, CJ is actually pretty cool. And I don't remember the crazy part. I don't even remember how we got on the topic of being a believer, but I never, I never cursed at the athletes or anything like that. Or I just was always, who God called me to be, just being a mentor. And I just remember him, telling me about you guys, and I was like, I got to meet your parents, and the rest was kind of history from there.
Yeah, because and that's I mean a true testament to being a mentor, because I think during that time, like we got out here to Florida, we found a church, but we were like, oh, it just wasn't a fit. And sometimes you have to do the work and find a church that fits you spiritually, in beliefs, everything. And I truly believe that. And not saying that the church was bad, but
Yeah.
it wasn't where we were in our lives at the time. And so we kind of stopped going. So we're at a point, and we've been going to church all of our all the kids' lives. So we
Right.
brought them up in the church, kind of like us. And so they knew God in their lives, And so I think that's so important, because it sticks with your children. It sticks
Yeah.
with them growing up. And I truly believe that. And it's actually a good thing, people.
It
And
is.
so yeah, he meets you guys, and then he's like telling me, Dad, hey, my coach, you remember Coach Gage? Hey, he's starting a church. And I'm like, man, and I was like, well, we'll see. And he's like, well, it's just meeting in their house right now.
Mhm.
I'm like, I've done the house church thing before, let's go try it out, because for one, I feel like we as a family, we need to get back into church
Yeah.
and just need to find a home. And I kind of want to talk, I'll let Nadera kind of talk about how your involvement in this and pushing your husband to say, it's time for you and us to take that next step. And
Next.
because yeah, because you guys were attending a church that actually offered you to be a pretty big part of their ministry.
Yeah.
So kind of talk on that.
Yeah. So definitely COVID was various, because that's like the time it was.
Yeah.
There were a lot of things going on. But I remember like the church that we had moved here for to help plant, our covering pastor, he felt called to go back to the church in Jersey, where I got saved, to help his father. And he's actually in the process of now taking that church over full time. And so it was very different. And so Stefan and another pastor had stepped up to co-pastor. And that's where we had kind of first birth No Walls. We did it through No Walls Youth Explosion, where we took a few young adults down to South Florida. We led a revival, and we really just took pride in raising up disciples with such a big heart on young adults. And
Absolutely.
so that was something that kind of is our, is something that we have a high passion for.
You
And
guys
so
are so great at doing it too. So
Thank you. And but we just started feeling like the Lord calling us out, like to something different.
Mhm.
And so as we're listening to that, we're like asking the Lord what. And I remember when we were asked to go back to go to Jersey and kind of help our other pastor up there with the young adult ministry that he wanted to birth through his church. And I just remember feeling like I don't feel the Lord is saying for us to leave Florida to go to Jersey. And I was like, I don't know if it's my preference, but I just don't feel like that's what God's saying. And so we prayed about it and we said, no, we feel like the Lord is still calling us here, but to something different. And it was just a lot of things that had happened that I feel like, we talked about it kind of in our book, but a lot of things that we felt opposition, by just us wanting to kind of step out. And later, we just, things were exposed, but it was a very hurtful place as we were leaving and exiting out that ministry. And I just remember telling Stefan, like, I just need a place where I can heal, where I can just, get filled and just really just be able to heal. So our intention was just that. And so as we're, visiting different churches, it just, we just couldn't, I remember that being in a place where I was like, I just don't feel like the connection. And so I don't even know how we found, I think I was listening to Pastor Tabitha like on social media, and I was just like, I just want to go to their like worship night. So we went to their worship night. It was amazing. And they did things in their house because again, they were starting a branch here. And so we would do house church, and it was again like this kind of family thing, like with Ken and Tabitha and like the leadership team there. It was a big family. And I feel like that was where I got a lot of my healing from, just having a family. I remember even just like having hard conversations with like Pastor Ken. And I feel like that was me kind of getting my voice back and just learning how to walk in my identity. And it was really great. Like we had great opportunities there. We did a lot of things in leadership there. And I just remember feeling like, I love this church. I love these people, but this is not where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And we went, and the COVID, I know was really a hard time for so many people. And for us, it was a season of clarity where we could pray and ask the Lord, well, what's next? And that's kind of where he spoke, no walls. And so from there, it was just really just as a wife being able to encourage Stefan. I feel like Stefan does a lot where he encourages so many people. And so I had to learn to be that voice, to like just be an encouragement to him and really be able to say, keep going, even when it looks hard, as we start house church, keep going, even when many people don't show up, as we go from place to place and, think expenses are a real thing, keep going, even though, money's tight, or even though we may not have a place. And I just feel like that's what the Lord, like there's things that I feel like the Lord has gifted me with. And I believe that one of the things is to encourage him. And every time I kind of think about like, okay, well, what if we did that? It just doesn't sit well with me, because like No Walls has like the thumbprint and the blueprint that I believe that we just needed to have, or to see, or to birth.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I honestly think God put you guys in the right place at the right time. Even it being in your home, because just starting out, because it was literally just our families,
Just us.
just us starting out and just kind of sharing God's word in that way. And I know that a lot of churches go through this, and I've throughout my years, even as a kid, I've seen my uncle start a church in his home. And but there's one quality that you guys have always brought, and that's authenticity, and of actually the truth of actually God being in your lives and you actually living that. And I it's so it's so hard to see how the church sometimes is put in a position where they feel like we have to run this as a business, because if we don't run it as a business, we're not gonna go anywhere. And
Yeah.
I've never seen that from you guys, and I appreciate that, because I'm gonna tell you what, guys, um I had a moment like about a month ago, and CJ, sorry, um he he came to me and he's like, "Dad," and because I've been busy, after I retired from my position and trying to grow something that where God really has me. At the
Yeah.
same time, I'm kind of like I'm like it's like pulling me away from my church family. And um he's like, "Dad, I just really think we need to get back into church,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and we need to get back with our family, our church family."
Mhm.
And just moments like that, that you guys have brought the importance to a family outside of your family.
Yeah.
And it's like God has built that family through you guys.
Mhm.
And I don't know if, like, smaller churches, if there's anybody with a smaller church that's listening, how vital that is
Yeah.
to make sure they're bringing that authenticity of
Mm.
God's word, the love of God
Yeah.
into the church, because you guys have brought that. And it's meant a lot for our family. I'm telling you that right now.
Awesome.
And I know that this is like you guys right in the middle of your on to the next, because it's been 3 years now. We just celebrated 3 years
Celebrate 3 years.
as a church, and that's
Yeah,
amazing, because
it is.
Yeah.
statistically,
It is.
we
Yeah.
literally the church should be like a side story, but
Right.
God is like, this is the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the name of the church is No Walls.
Yeah.
And the the meaning behind No Walls is to take the church outside of, outside into the people, which
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I always say there's three things that you have to work on your life, and that your spiritual, your mental, and your physical.
Yeah.
And it's cool because the two of you have wrapped that all up in one package. Even out on the out on the track right now, because Nadira, you're a track coach right now.
Yeah.
And well, I should say, so are you, Gage, because because like you said, you're always trying to recruit him to coach, and you happen to
Yeah.
recruit him as your assistant right now. And
She the big boss.
it's funny how that role is. You're
Yeah.
co coaches, co-pastors, and it's like,
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
I'm,
nice.
I'm the boss here, you're the boss there. So
Right.
That is true. Wow.
but
Yes.
and I know you've had some experiences where it's been hard, because there are a lot of regulations about sharing your faith. But
Yes.
the importance of you guys just being there, and
Yeah.
the kids out there that know you, they know without you even having to say a word,
Yeah.
because of your authenticity of what you guys
Yeah.
bring. And I appreciate you guys so much for bringing that into
Appreciate
our home. And I know we all haven't been the best stewardship of ours. And I but I know God is faithful through
you. Yeah.
just
So
bringing you guys in our lives, and what you have brought to us. And so I know right now, like I said, you guys are in the middle of track season.
yeah.
Yes.
And we are and I still feel like No Walls is a growing church.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the core that you have built, the families that are there,
Yeah.
I mean, I love. And anybody in Orlando, Winter Garden area, needs to come join us,
Yes. Come on.
because it's such a beautiful place to be, to enjoy God's word, to worship. I feel like I wear so many hats sometimes, and
Mhm.
I've had the opportunity to wear the hat of worship at
Yeah.
No Walls.
Mhm.
Yeah. Miss you,
Um,
bro.
yeah, yeah, and it's like, man, the season in my life has brought I'm in the middle of kind of my on to the next, and that's kind of what inspired me to do this, because it's like I've felt inspired by so many people throughout my life and their adventure and their testimonies, their stories, however you may call it, that I really feel like it needs to be out into the world. And you
Yes.
guys are a big part of that, especially with our kids,
Mhm.
what you've brought to the table for them. But even me and Bree,
Yeah.
Love you
there's
guys.
you guys have been such an example through your marriage for us. There's
Yeah.
days where I've had hard, and I know that you guys deal with the same
Yeah.
stuff. There's
100%.
days
Listen,
that
this
marriage,
is a real marriage. This ain't no TV
yeah,
marriage.
this ain't no TV marriage.
This
I
ain't no
know
TV
that.
marriage.
Yeah,
Right.
because you got a bunch of stuff in the pot and everything.
Yeah.
The seasons aren't right sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, but
absolutely.
the main ingredients are always there, and
Mhm.
I mean that's God's love and
Yeah.
God's purpose in what you guys. And
Mhm.
I thank you so much for just being a part of this, because
Yeah.
this story isn't told without you guys.
Absolutely. We thank you, Vince.
Yeah, thank you so
Listen, I'm proud
much.
that you did this. I remember you sharing that you wanted to do something like this, and
Yes.
to see it to come to pass is it's going to touch a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
and
really thank you for allowing us to be a part of this. This is going
Absolutely.
to be cool. This is good.
Yeah, we're
yeah,
excited to see it. Thank you
So,
for your yes.
definitely.
yes.
Yeah, for sure, because people like you have, like I said, have inspired it, and I want to continue to go. And I ask that, for one, if you live in the area, just No Walls. If not, go online, No Walls. We'll put the official link up
Yeah,
in this,
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
because even looking online and feeling like if you want to be a part of the No Walls family,
Yes.
because it's a beautiful family, and even from outside the walls, as the church is called,
Yes.
their level show, and I know that through this family, it's just it's consistently growing, and
Yeah.
I thank you guys so much for being a part of it.
Thank you for
Thank you,
having
Vince.
us.
On to the
Yeah,
next.
on to the next.
Blake,